Hello everyone, so in this video, it's just going to be a very simple video. I'm going to be explaining the tech stack that me and our AI developers use when building for our clients. So what we do is we implement AI into businesses. The structure is we get on an audit call with them, we audit their business, and then we present to them 5 different agents that would be suitable for their business that would solve their 5 biggest bottlenecks. Obviously, if they don't have 5, then it could be 3, it could be 2, etc. Now, for most of our clients, it's always 5. And yeah, in this video, I'm just going to go through how do we build these agents and what is the current process. So the main AI tool that we use is Claude. Obviously, more specifically, it's Claude Code. So if you have never used Claude Code, you should, especially if you're building AI agents. And even if you're a business owner and you have a sort of an idea or a question, you can just directly type into Claude Code, speak with the AI, and it will basically guide, you need to guide the AI, but it can give you some brainstorming ideas on how to accomplish a specific problem that you have. You can connect it to all of your different types of data, and from there, you can then come to a solution to whatever kind of bottleneck you have. So that's essentially how we will do the auditing. Now, when you download the Claude app, there's 3 different types of Claude. There's Claude Chat, there's Claude Cowork, and there's Claude Code. Now, Claude Chat is just for simple chatting, simple questions. For example, give me a recommendation of a restaurant in this area. Claude Cowork is more for team collaboration, and it connects to your computer. It uses the files that is on your computer. And then you have Claude Code, which is, when you want to actually build, for example, a dashboard or a specific automation that will run in the background, etc. Now, me and the team, we use mostly Claude Code. We use Claude Code the whole time. There is one guy in our team that uses ChatGPT Codex, which is also good. I just have a preference towards Claude and Claude Code. So I just use Claude Code. So once you download this app, you have 3 options. Just go straight to Claude Code. And then from there, you'll be able to create a desktop. You'll be able to create a folder that is on your desktop. You can link it to the Claude Code. And so any sort of code that it produces or any sort of resource that it creates, it will sync directly into that desktop. So that's how you can have it organized. Now, other than Claude Code, which you have GitHub, right? So GitHub is essentially it's basically like a tool where you can store code into it. And you have something called a GitHub repo. So in the GitHub repo, there'll be all of the information of whatever you have built, and it'll get stored there forever, right? So you don't need to be on your personal computer to retrieve that code. Now, this is super important because whatever you build in Claude Code, you can then basically sync everything you're building into GitHub. And GitHub, it will always be there. All of your files will be stored. So let's say if you do want to collaborate with someone from your team on this build, then they can directly, you would have to invite them to your GitHub project, and then there they'll have a link that they can use, and they can connect directly to their own Claude Code and make any sort of changes. So the code of whatever you're building, let's say a dashboard, it will be in GitHub. Then after that, you need a database, right? So you need a database to store all of the data. So let's just take the example of a dashboard again. So with a dashboard, you have multiple elements, right? You have the first, which is the UI of the dashboard. So how the dashboard will look like, how you're going to display the data. Then the second part is where is this data going to get stored? And then the third part is the background automations, which will make sure that everything is syncing correctly. So these are the main 3 parts when you build a dashboard, for example. You also need to host that dashboard. So there's actually 4 main parts, and you would host that on something called Versal. So which just hosts it so that the link is publicly available and anyone can just click on it, or anyone that you share this link with will be able to click on it and will be able to see that dashboard. Now, in terms of privacy, if you want to keep it private, then you would add something like a Google authentication, etc. I won't go too much in detail, but essentially here to build this dashboard, you need Claude Code, you need GitHub, then you need Supabase, and you need Versal, and also Railway. So GitHub, Supabase, Versal, and then Railway. So this is how I would build a dashboard. So basically you use Claude Code. With Claude Code, you would be syncing the code into GitHub, right? You probably would have 2 different types of GitHub repos. so two different types of projects. You would have one which is for the front end, and then you have another one which is for the back end. So what is the difference between front end and back end? The difference is the front end is the UI of the dashboard. So what do I mean by UI? Let's go to Apple. This is, for example, the front end, right? And then the back end is all of the automations that would sync the data. So for example, when I click on learn more, that's not really a good example, but for example, if I click on iPhone and then I choose my iPhone and then there I click on buy, and where is it? So when I click on buy, I choose a color, blah, blah, blah. I choose the storage, no trade-in. And essentially the backend would be, first of all, displaying this information, but as well, when I would like, for example, put my wireless number and my billing zip code, when I press continue, whatever sort of automation it does in the background, that's what would be in the backend. So in terms of a dashboard, it would be all of the data. So let's say you are analyzing your meta ads, then in the backend, it would have all of that information. So where you're getting that data from, how you're syncing it, etc. And the front end is simply the UI, the Google authentication. Well, the Google authentication could also be in the backend, but that's basically the difference. Now, you would have two different types of GitHub repo. The one that would get synced to Versal is the front end, right? And then the one that gets the back end, well, basically you would sync this into Railway and it would take that information directly from Supabase. And you can also do this, so this is how it would work. And in the front end with Versal to host the whole system. So this is basically the main tech stack that we use for everything. Now, if we need to also implement, for example, if we're actually gonna also create an agent, so not just a dashboard, but also an agent where it will be basically where it will be like an assistant for the company. So you would have the dashboard, which is the right visual aspect, and then you have the agent, which is like the assistant. Let's just call it AI agent, which is the assistant. So this could be a tool that the team uses or just an agent that you would use, and you'll be able to ask it any sort of information about the data that is stored in Supabase, or it can be proactive by sending you notifications, reviewing the data. Whenever something that is an outlier, then it will notify you directly. Now, most of these companies that we work with, they are in Slack. So we also add a Slack app. So we create a Slack app and we connect this Slack app to the backend of the whole system, right? And actually what we would do is between the backend and the Slack app, we would create an OpenClaw agent or Hermes agent, whatever. So I'm just going to add here, and here I'll put OpenClaw or Hermes or Victor, whatever. So these are basically, so from here, the Slack app would use the OpenClaw, Hermes, Victor, the AI agent. This would directly be connected to the backend. So whenever the client or whenever someone will ask it a question, so whenever someone would ask it a question, so let's say person asks real question, they will be speaking with the Slack app, who is then connected to the OpenClaw agent, who is connected to the backend, which is connected to the Supabase. And essentially, let's say if I ask it, will review the data in the last 7 days, well, this whole code in the backend will be configured to make sure that we have the up-to-date data. So this would be syncing based on a cron job, or whenever new data comes in, it will be syncing the database. And then, well, whenever we would ask it a question, the OpenClaw agent, which has a master prompt, person skills, the OpenClaw agent will use this master prompt and personality and skills to know exactly, well, what its function is. And then it will basically use that data to come up with a reply. So this is basically the tech stack that we would use. Now, if we want to go a little bit more in detail, for the AI model, we always use Claude Opus 4.6. Now, if we're going to use OpenClaw directly, we would connect this to ChatGPT Codex. You can have other models out there like GLM 5.2, which is essentially like Claude Opus 4.6, and it's cheaper than Codex. However, it's not really that reliable if you're going to implement that for a client, and also it uses a Chinese AI model, so it might not be like it's a bit of a gray area using GLM 5.2 for client work, because obviously you're training the Chinese AI model with the client's data, and some clients, especially if they are in the US, they might be against that. But we usually just use Claude Opus 4.6 or GLM 5.2. And then that's pretty much it. This is the tech stack that we use. And so that's pretty much it. That's the tech stack that we use. I've used this tech stack now for probably the last year. Obviously, I've used this tech stack for almost a year. Obviously, there's things like OpenClaw, Hermes, Victor, Codex, which came out this specific year. So things do change. Now I'm using a lot Victor, which is essentially OpenClaw but on steroids and 10 times more expensive. But this is the tech stack. I get this question a lot, so just thought of doing a quick video kind of explaining everything. Thought it would be relevant. So this is the tech stack. Now, this is the tech stack. It's pretty simple. Now, if you are someone who would want to learn further how to use all of these different tools and to use this tech stack, or you have further questions, then I'll put a link in the description where essentially you can apply. And well, we're looking for AI developers so this is the tech stack that I use. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let me know if you have a different tech stack, and hopefully this was some sort of, obviously there's way more work that goes into this, but hopefully this was useful. So that's basically the tech stack that we use in a nutshell. Obviously different AI developers, they will have a different kind of tech stack. We are leaning much more towards just using Victor. It is expensive, but the desired outcome that we need to accomplish, we get it quicker by using Victor. So for us, since we are managing 32 clients, we're building 5 agents per client. So in total, that's, I'm not trying to do any math here, but that's 160 agents. So once you have the tech stack, now you have to figure out a way on how. So you have a client request, right? This client, they know that their business needs AI. They know that it can solve a specific problem, a bottleneck in their business. However, they just don't know how to solve it with AI, and they might not have the time to do that. So that's when they would work with us. And that's why we do an audit of their business, because the business owner knows their business much better than we would know their business. However, based on our experiences, whenever they come up with a specific bottleneck or just even laying out their business, we would be able to directly see, well, let's say we had a client where she would manually forward emails from the main email inbox. So I don't know why, but they have one email inbox where they receive all of the different types of emails from their business. So that could be leads, it could be complaints, it could be partnership proposals, it could be clients asking updates. And this person, it's a family-owned business. Well, the founder would just, during the day, forward the emails to the people who are responsible for those types of emails in their team. So they have 5 people. And she would just spend 3 to 4 hours per day just forwarding these emails to the different types of people. So she knows that AI can solve it, but she didn't know how it could solve this problem. And well, if you have been using AI, then you would know pretty much that this is something simple to solve. Obviously, if you actually want to do this 100% correctly and that it's reliable, it gets a little bit more complicated, but essentially you just get the AI to automatically categorize these emails. And then there's what is complicated is training this AI based on positive and negative feedback loops to then get the AI to correctly categorize these emails and transfer it to the person who is responsible for that type of email. But what I'm trying to explain here is the client had an issue. They know that AI can solve this issue. We come in, we audit the business, and then from there we would create a game plan on how would we solve this specific bottleneck. Email categorization. All right, now we have to figure out a way on how we will train the AI so that it knows exactly how to have a 100% accuracy score in categorizing these emails. And then we did the build. But the reason why I'm talking about this is because this client has a desired outcome in mind, right? And the desired outcome in this case was that during the day, these emails just get forwarded correctly to the appropriate people in their team. And so we had to build a system around this. So as someone who is managing and responsible for the client work, what is also important is that you have in mind how are we going to achieve the outcome that this client has in mind the quickest and in the most reliable way. And so this is basically the tech stack that we would use to do that. And at the same time, with AI improving, it's our responsibility to make sure that we are up, that we know what kind of tool will allow us to achieve the outcome that the client wants the quickest and in the most reliable way. So basically this is just all the information. This is how you would get to that point. What is very important that we saw is positive and negative feedback loops. Even positive feedback loops, a lot of people, they just train the AI on negative feedback loops and never really give it positive feedback, which does change a lot. And that's how we are able to do all this. Now, if you would want to go more in detail on what I've explained here and how to create your own, for example, your first dashboard or create your first AI agent, your first AI tool, I have all the resources here. So where we talk about the AI roadmap, what does that look like, prompting guides, how to get started with OpenClaw. Now, OpenClaw, this is 1 month old. OpenClaw is now, I think, 5 to 6 months old. Obviously, there's new tools that came out like Hermes, Victor, etc. But this is a great starting point to understand how to build a system like this, how to create OpenClaw agents, how to create different OpenClaw profiles, how to set up a virtual private server is very important, how to connect to a Chinese API provider, how to set up security, memory, reverse engineering, prompting, and then most importantly, well, we have all of the different types of templates. So I can show you an example here. We have the data, dashboard, and analysis AI. And I literally go through step by step on how to create, for example, a dashboard from scratch and connecting it to Supabase, connecting it to Railway. So if you would want to have access to this, just fill in the form. There will be a link in the description. We are always recruiting people who want to work in this space, and we also do training, and we might even place you in your first build. So if you're looking to also work in this space, or if you're looking to learn, fill in this form and I'll get back to you.